Hello, and welcome to the Outlier Podcast, the podcast for everyone who is interested in building better homes. My name is Evangelia, and I'm hosting this podcast with Anthony, founder of Outlier, who is passionate about creating beautiful and high-performing homes. Together, we sit down once a month to chat with industry experts to help educate Australians about the potential of creating healthy, comfortable, and energy-efficient homes. We hope you join us on this journey. Today we are talking with Marnie Hawson from Marnie Hawson Photography. In a previous life, she was an environmental scientist with a keen interest in birds. These days you can find Marnie creating beauty from behind the camera lens, photographing impactful, beautiful and high-performance homes, all in a quest to contribute to a better world. Marnie is committed to working only with clients who are serious about sustainability, which allows her to align with people who are aware of the social impacts of what they do and are actively making a change. She is B-Corp certified, her practice is carbon neutral, and she is a member of 1% for the Planet. She joins us today to discuss how she found her purpose and provide words of wisdom on how you can find yours too. Hi Marnie, thank you for coming and chatting with us today. It's good to see you, good to meet you finally in person. So did you want to start off today by telling us a little bit about who you are and exactly what it is that you do?
Thanks for having me. My name is Marnie Hawson. I'm in business to bring back nature. And it just also happens that I'm a photographer.
That's pretty good.
So to explain that a bit, I read the Simon Sinek books, Start Your Why and Find Your Why, at the start of this year. Have you heard of them?
I have not, no, but do expand. Yeah.
So I suppose I started my career as an environmental scientist. Fun fact, I have an honours degree in sexually transmitted diseases in birds, which I've never used professionally.
Yeah, no, that's unbelievable. I didn't even know that was a thing, so there you go.
Lyrebirds with chlamydia.
Wow, okay.
I have heard about that with koalas, but a different kind. Yeah.
Lyrebirds at that point.
Right.
But anyway, so environmental science for 10 years, but when I became a photographer, I found it really hard to pigeonhole myself as just a photographer, I suppose. So when I read these books by Simon, I realised that my why was a lot broader. It was about making more of a difference in issues like conservation, climate change, biodiversity, and things like that. So I've always had a big passion for the business side of things.
Yeah.
I've always liked helping others grow their business and creating impact through my business and personal life. So once I read Simon's books, I kind of realised that it was a much bigger thing and I didn't have to pigeonhole myself as just that. Mm-hmm. So it was also about enacting change in other businesses by showing them how you can run a business, a for-profit business, but also by creating impact. So it made a lot more sense to kind of broaden my whole why to rather than just saying I'm a photographer and people just put you in this thing. You know, usually once people found out my background of environmental science, it kind of made them, they had more questions about that than photography. So I decided just to kind of change how I looked at things, and then everything made a bit more sense about why I love the business side, why I try to create impact, just like a much more holistic reason of doing things. And I think that also explained, in retrospect, why I wanted to certify as a B Corp.
Well, that's a whole other topic of discussion right there. But I understand why you have that holistic approach now. I didn't realise that was something you actively sought to do. It was look beyond just photography and what you do in your day-to-day, but then look to include that as, into business and to help others in business to be able to do that. Like that's honestly genius.
Well, it made sense, and I didn't really realise that until I read these books. That kind of made you look back at your whole purpose and what you existed for, what was important to you. And then I realised that, you have these common themes coming up. And then I went, well, that makes more sense in how I can explain myself rather than just being, you're this narrow field of things. So
a lot of people go through their entire lives and still don't discover what their purpose is. That's another topic in itself as well. But
saying that, there's, I don't think I've figured out the purpose in career life, everything. there's actually many days where I run into my husband in the kitchen on a work day or something. We both work from home. And I'm just like, what's the point? What's the purpose? What are we doing this for? So I don't have the answers. I still feel, I'm not doing enough. How to create more impact. So it's a constant battle. I'm sure it'll never
You're not alone.
end.
That's I think that's the case for everyone. And I'm sure the thing that I think will be interesting for a lot of listeners is the relatability here. So they may have a passion. The reason they're listening to this right now is because they clearly have an interest or a passion in what we're talking about. And what makes it unique for you is, I guess, you had a complete, not just a career change, but you changed trajectory entirely. And I think the question to probably ask is more, do you look back on that fondly and making that decision, regardless of what where you're heading and what that purpose is ultimately?
From environmental science to photography? Because I suppose I've almost had two where then I went into photography and then decided to kind of completely pivot and niche down what I did as well. So it's almost two in there, but I don't think I could ever go back and work for someone else. I think working for yourself has made me unemployable.
Yeah, I'm putting my hand up for those who can't see.
Yeah, and I think a lot of small businesses feel that way. But yeah, I suppose I could talk a little bit about what a certified B-Corp is, because I always get asked that question. And a certified B-Corp is a business that meets high standards of environmental and social performance, accountability and transparency. So your business is assessed in 5 areas. This is like the passive house principles where sometimes I'm put on the spot and then I get them wrong. Yeah. But it's environment, community, governance, customers and workers. And I don't have any workers. I always wondered how it would go being a sole trader, providing a service, doing your B Corp, but it is possible. So if you don't have workers, those points are just assigned amongst the other 4 areas. But B Corps seek to use that business as a force for good, and they measure success generally by the positive impact that you're creating. So it's not about the short wins and profit. It's about the long-term investments and making a difference, bringing benefit to communities, environment, people. But it's always still for-profit businesses. So just because you're making a profit doesn't mean you can't also make a difference in other areas as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. That's really important to mention as well.
Yeah.
I feel as though some of the businesses, when I first started out, some of the businesses I looked up to, I kept seeing the B-Corp certified logo. And I was like, what is this? And when I dived into it, I was just like, this is amazing. Like, this is something that allows you to, as you say, have a business, operate the business, but not just be profit driven, but consider all these other things and contribute back as well. It's certainly, admittedly, something that I feel like I have been working towards for a couple of years now. I know it probably took you some time as well. It's not something you can just fill an application form and then they'll hand over the certification. They do scrutinise that and make sure that you're genuine.
Yep. It is a process. I did it at the start of 2021. I'd been talking about doing it for a while and I think I'd looked at it and just felt a bit overwhelmed. So I thought the only way I'm going to actually succeed is to block out my calendar.
Yeah.
So I decided that for the first week of every month I wouldn't take on any shoots and I would work on it and get it done. And I think a good tip is employing a B Corp consultant, because when I first looked at it, no one was doing that in Australia and I'd found someone in Canada, I think, and I was about to engage them to help me and then realise that there's a whole suite of them in Australia that you can use. So that was really good, just to get you on track and make sure you're answering the right questions, things like that.
That's pretty sound advice. Just in knowing the application myself, there is so many ones where you're like, I don't know how to respond to this. And just having someone there to assist, I'm sure, just gave you that confidence, I guess, or just, make sure we're doing it right.
Yeah.
So ultimately, how long was that duration again?
Well, I started in January. I think I submitted in April, but without completing it. So there was such a queue that they said, get it in, which kind of freaked me out because I'm such a perfectionist. I was like, what do you mean? What if they look at it before it's finished? But there was about a 6-month wait, I think, at that point. A lot of businesses were doing it, especially in the pandemic, had started to look at making an impact, and a lot of people were doing the assessment, so there was a big wait. So I think in November they eventually looked at it and ticked it off. So it was a big wait in the queue.
I guess I do want to ask, because you have done so much in that time, that, I guess I do. I'm talking to those who are listening right now that essentially have maybe thinking about, jumping over the fence, coming into work on, high performance homes or passive house homes, or just generally doing better when it comes to construction and livability in Australian homes, and who are maybe, not industry related, but looking for that sort of push, I guess, to come across. And what would you give advice to anyone who, I guess the reason for that, just to clarify, is for purpose. Like you have this passion, or you have this interest in this side of things, and you want to get into that. So what is that sort of advice you would give to anyone who's listening that, to follow their purpose? Or it could just be in general, I suppose, as well.
Find their purpose. Well, I mean, a lot of people are looking for that. I'd say you could almost read the Simon Sinek books first as a good point, because that clarified a little bit for me. And then I think if you have a business, if you can make change, look at your business to how you can make change within that business. Because you can run through that B-Corp assessment without actually certifying that gives you ideas. I think that's a really useful tool that people can do. You can I think they say you can do it in a couple of hours if you kind of just smash it out, answer all the questions without, filling in all the documentation and that kind of thing. But that also gives ideas about where you can make change in your business. Like, are you measuring your outputs on the environment in terms of waste and carbon assessments? You don't have to certify as carbon neutral, but I do each year. So that's something a practice can do pretty easily.
Yeah, okay.
Giving back is another one, doing pro bono.
Yeah, I've seen you've recently done that as well with the Australian Passive House Association. Is that right?
Well, after doing my B Corp, I had put a pro bono program in place, maybe for about a year, where I think 3 or 4 times a year I would open it up and take applications. But I actually just scrapped that at the end of last year because, funnily enough, it was really hard to get people organised. So like the last person or non-profit that won was a successful applicant. They eventually said, look, we just can't rally people, get organised to kind of do this shoot. So, I don't know, I just noticed a few things like that. So I thought I'll get rid of the program and I will target where I want to give my time, to aligned non-profits like done Renew and Australian Passive House Association, Climate Council, Australian Environment Grant Makers Association and Biodiversity Legacy. So kind of climate change, building and conservation spaces. Great. So that's, I think, how I'll do it going forward.
Yep, that seems like that's going to have a far better result. So that's great.
Yep. But after the B Corp, I think the other big thing that you can do to make a difference in any business is money. And I'm so passionate about how people use their money. I've been banging on about it for years. At the moment, I'm actually creating a digital course on how people can make a bigger impact with their money. So I've always said if every business and individual thought about where their money was being used and you took all your money out of banks and super that are investing in fossil fuels and you put it in clean banking, ethical super, like imagine that difference that it would make. And the same goes for suppliers where you're spending your money. There's pretty much always an ethical alternative, but humans are lazy. We always do. We do what we do and we take the easy way.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm creating a course for small business owners in Australia to move their money where it matters. To ensure, to give them a simple step-by-step process that they can ensure that their banking, super and suppliers are being moved to where it matters and are aligned with their values. And then they can also show the next generation that they're invested in their future. So say your kids are saying, what are you doing about climate change? You'll be like, well, I just divested all this money from the fossil fuel industry. I think that's a really powerful, easy way that anyone, any business, any individual can do straight away.
Wow. My first thoughts are like, when do you sleep? But
I don't have kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we might actually at the end in the show notes just get all of the information to link people to that course when it goes live and, be able to share that across because that sounds like a really amazing thing to assist. And if not just a precursor to even something to B-Corp or whatever that be, just to get that mindset. So the cool thing about that, I imagine, is you can probably digest that while, laying in bed at night with the tablet on and the captions on and take it piece by piece.
Yeah.
Is that the format it's going to be? Like, what's the format going to be?
It'll just be a very simple step by step. You can tick them off as you go to get results really quickly. Like potentially, an hour or two per module, which is kind of banking, super, and spending are the main ones. But I always thought, I think last year I wanted to do a digital course and I don't know, the idea didn't really hit me. And then this year I just thought I'm like you, the biggest nerd when it comes to organisation, and I use Notion, you use ClickUp.
Yeah, ClickUp.
And I'm just very, process driven. And I thought there actually is benefit in how I think and just setting it out so simply to get it done because, I don't know, that's the stuff I love. But most creatives and small businesses hate it. I love the admin. I love it.
I think most people would just about pay you to have a template for your Notion template. And, I can vouch for an online digital course too, as we're just about to launch ours in about a week's time, and I know what goes into that. So it's been an 18-month labour of love for sure, and pretty excited for that one to get out there to the people.
What's your topic generally?
It's essentially bridging the gap. So a lot of the inquiries we get for consultation are just basically like someone with a bit of knowledge and expertise to bridge the gap between a designer and a builder, usually client-driven. So, the client wants this outcome, but the designer or builder don't have experience and they want to be able to sort of, hey, this is what I want, but they don't know how to get there. And we sort of come in and go, hey, this is how you can achieve that. Here's the details, literally the construction details on how to achieve that. And here's a reason why. So that's just sort of video recordings of myself and Sandra. And that's kind of it. So hopefully,
it's exciting.
Yeah. There's been surprisingly a bit of interest as well from designers and builders in the industry who just want to upskill too. They're just interested to know, maybe because they've had a client come to them and say, hey, we want to do this. And they're like, what the hell is that? How do we do that? And that, they can just jump the gun and get there as well by doing it. So, yeah.
Well, I've had a few clients who have said that about architects and builders, that they haven't done heaps of high-performing homes and there is a bit of a gap. I see that.
Yeah. There is. And we have another chat coming up soon with someone in that space who does that in the US. So it'd be interesting to see, how they've approached it. They've been doing it for a few years now too. So, hi. Thanks for taking the time to come and have a look at the Hybrid Home course. It's been produced by Outlier Studio and we've been working on it for the last 18 months. Look, we cover all the topics that you're going to need to be able to upskill and learn a little bit more about how you can have a higher performing home. We look at energy efficient housing design in general, orientation, airtightness, insulation, ventilation, thermal bridging, glazing, and we do touch on cost a little bit too. Although, disclaimer, it's only at the current time of recording that we've been able to put those forward. You'll find everything from as-built verifications, in which we have our own services and advice, helpful handouts that touch on all of the topics that we discussed that you can see on the left-hand side here in the video. We consider things in detail, like how we go about recording our height for shading. We also do some demonstrations on how to achieve better results in a NatHERS assessment. You'll see what it looks like when we do our inspections and see the thermal bridging occurring. And you can also have a look at a previous presentation from Builders Declare that we did. We'll look at the importance of ventilated cavities and the right wraps and moisture control, as well as the ventilation systems. Thermal bridging is a big one that we touch on, and a step-by-step process of how to install a window. On top of that, you've got all these fantastic construction details you can use for projects yourselves and in your documentation. We look at all the best practices, high performance, and even airtight construction as well in these details. So please take the opportunity now to purchase the course. You will not regret. So this is something I've been itching to now ask about a bit more, because I'm a massive architecture fan as it is, and you have had access to some of the most amazing designed homes in this country. And I want to know if you have one or many memorable visits to take for shoots at all that you might want to share with us at all? Or a favourite or anything? Anything?
I think I'm shooting one next Tuesday.
Oh, that's funny. It's ours.
Although, in all seriousness, I am very pumped to document Outlier's first hybrid home next week.
Yes. That's now, I guess, out there. No, it's good. We are,
Is it a secret?
it was. No. Marnie's coming to take photos of our first ever completed hybrid home, which is really cool. And there's actually some pretty big news to announce, I suppose, once they go public as well, which I'll keep everyone posted. We're waiting on some verification of the latest results from the energy assessments, and have a PHPP underway, and we actually have a silly amount of sensors throughout the entire home as well, which we're looking to share all that data with everyone and give a bit of a comparison of how it's performing. So
Amazing.
Not to take the limelight away from the amazing photos, but yeah.
No, performance is everything.
Totally.
I'm going to disappoint you though and not really name any names, but I think I am pretty excited about shooting so many more passive houses. For instance, 2021 I shot one, which was down at the Cape.
Yep.
Last year I shot 2, and then by the end of this year, currently it'll be around 12.
Wow.
So that kind of shows how it's growing in the space, and they're either pending certification. They're not high performance, they're passive.
Yeah, they're going to have the plaque on the wall.
Yeah. So I am very excited that that's kind of showing that there's a change happening. It's not solving everything. That's not solving the housing crisis or, that everyone can afford these, but it's showing that there is a model that is out there that already exists that people can look to for inspiration.
There's a change happening.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you must have had so many conversations then on this. And is there anything in general that people have shared with you as to why they went for certification on their homes?
I don't, not specifically. I mean, some of it could also be the architect and builder want to get it over the line to kind of show that it meets performance. I don't know. I think people just want to live in a really comfortable, high-performing house, and passive house is that it's the only way that you can verify it. I think that's where my environmental scientist or scientist mind comes back to it, is that once you know about it, that's the only measurable building, and it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, no.
And is it only 5 to 10% kind of uplift from building a standard I mean, we don't want to talk numbers. I know it's very controversial.
No, I'm quite happy
roughly,
to. Yeah.
I heard that at the Passive House conference.
Yeah, I know. And you probably heard a few echoes throughout the builders wing at the Passive House conference like I did. But no, it's really climate dependent in my experience. So, if you're in a really cool climate, that number could be up to 15% compared to a 6-star energy rated home.
Yeah.
But if you move, further to north, to Sydney or further north to that, you're starting to then look at more what would be there anyway, as far as, a 90mm stud wall or double glazed as opposed to triple glazed windows for those to get those performance values in line. So, yeah, that would then maybe come closer to 5%. So I know that is one of the things that maybe gets left out a little bit when someone stands up, at a conference and says, hey, it was only 5% higher on our construction bill. Hang on a sec. Where was that climate where you're located?
Yeah.
That's sometimes admitted. So, yeah, I don't think there is an actual real answer that you can just
that applies to everyone.
Applies to everyone. It just varies wherever you go. And, as we've started branching out a bit more now too into more regional, like when I mean regional, I mean like 5 hours drive from anywhere projects, materials are way higher. So that ratio compared to the one that we had in our Melbourne project is way higher as well for that reason. So it's just like totally different depending on, location and climate.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah,
I think,
does really think. Yeah.
I think also I'm very passionate about getting these buildings high performing or passive in front of the general public, which is why I kind of pitch all my clients' work to even the more editorial magazines like House and Garden, Home Beautiful, Inside Out, even Country Style, a few passive houses in there, because a lot of architects and builders want their work to be seen in green and sanctuary, but you're kind of already preaching to the converted.
Yep.
And that is nice to be in there, but I really like getting these houses in front of people that might have never heard of a passive house or not know what a high performance house is. And they, you get these magazines still generally have 6 to 8 pages in there. So they'd be looking at it with these, beautiful photos, story about the family, and then they read it and it just talks about all these benefits.
Yeah.
And then that might make them think, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I could do that. There's no reason why it can't be beautiful and high performing
I love that.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it might just spark some thought in people that might not know about it. So I think that's really valuable.
Yeah.
Okay. That actually leads on to one of the next questions, Marnie, which is, what are your thoughts on the urban theory that in order to have a high functioning home, you have to sacrifice something in terms of its aesthetics or its beauty?
It's so untrue. And I don't know if I have to be more tactful here, but like every time I get sent
Be honest.
recce photos before a shoot of white plaster walls, just a bit of my soul dies over and over. And I'm surprised I'm still alive because so many of those little parts, there's so many. And I'm like, I know it's not the architect, or it's, you're working with the client, and sometimes the interiors aren't as important, or you might put more of the money into other things. But I think that was part of what people thought, a sustainable house was.
Yeah.
It looked a certain way and the interiors were bleak. And I don't know, I think that's what's in a lot of people's heads, but it can be anything. Because I remember at the Passive House conference, we heard a figure that only 25%, roughly, of the cost of a total build is related to building performance. So I imagine that's what, wrap, insulation, windows, doors. I feel like I'm missing a vital.
Well, yeah, there's the air tightness factor comes into,
all of that, the wrap, that kind of thing. So that leaves...
ventilation if you're going for air tightness, as
yes,
you mentioned.
HRV, that was my other main one. So that leaves 75% for things like walls, floors, kitchens, bathrooms. I mean, I'm not the expert here. I'm kind of making this up. But, so that can be anything. It doesn't have to be white plaster.
Not at all.
And I would love it when it's not. Just give me like a timber-filled cabin or something,
Yeah.
Those things shoot a lot better from my perspective as well. It's a lot more warmth,
I think
texture.
Oh, God. You spend all your time inside, whether you want to admit that or not. It's, the data doesn't lie. And that's probably one of the things I think we talk about in our office a lot is like interiors are the most underutilized or underappreciated thing in design.
That's what makes you feel good sitting in a space.
Yes.
You're not going to, yes, you need a great roof, but you're not going to be, I don't know, feeling that every time you're sitting down to have coffee and looking out your window. It's what is inside that makes it feel so good. And that gets left behind.
Can you remember the first time you walked into an airtight, well-insulated home? Like the feeling?
It was warm.
For me, it's calmness.
Quiet.
It's just this calmness, and I think you can get that from interiors as well, from finishes and things. Like there's a lot to be said for that. As soon as I attach emotion to anything, it just means so much more. It just amplifies everything, and that's I think why it's so important to keep check on that too. And when you were talking about that, I just immediately thought of the block, like the first things that people share of a certified passive house image is just like this white block. That's your house. There's no
soul.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be at all.
No. And I think the more you show of high-performing houses that have nice interiors, the more people will realise that you can do whatever you want with them. But that's why it's so important to have someone on board, I think, to do the interiors.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we pretty much, 95% of our projects have an interior designer. We have an in-house interior designer, Harvest. But if we don't, we also have an independent or, someone working with us in an interior design role regardless for that reason.
Amazing.
Put a high value on it.
Yep.
Everyone listening, interior design.
Yes. And that's also why I made a decision a year or so ago not to shoot without a stylist. Because that then comes down to furniture, I suppose. Like you can make a beautiful interior, but you can't control the taste of your client's furniture. So a stylist just does such a valuable job of coming in on the day and moving things around for the actual photo.
So you were initially doing that all on your own, were you?
Yes.
Okay.
And I mean, some places were finished more than others. So when I used to shoot more editorial or for magazines and things, you might walk in and have to do a lot less. But a homeowner that's essentially doing a favour for the architect, letting them come into their house and shoot, might have kids, that's normal life.
Yeah.
So you can't expect everything to be looking like a magazine. So a lot of it's just about decluttering, making it a bit more minimal, and then bringing back in things that the homeowner has for that particular shot. Botanicals, you can make anything look good with a giant autumn branch of something.
Yeah.
But it also makes it feel, again, it's like a texture thing. And I find a lot of people don't have enough, like sheer curtains. I think we talked about this.
Oh,
sheer
God.
curtains, rugs. It's almost like soft furnishings finish off a space.
Yeah, and when
Make
you
it
told
feel
me
good.
that, I went straight to the clients. Like as soon as we sort of parted ways and said our goodbyes, I went straight to the clients and went, "Hey, when are you getting those shears in?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they had them on order by the end of the week.
Have they got them in?
8 weeks lead time. We might miss this one. We might have to have myself holding some up out of shot."
From the office.
Yeah. Well, I know we've just touched on, your thoughts around whether something, sustainable can't look pleasing to the eye. But do you think that sustainable architecture changed the way that we think about our homes, in your opinion?
Yes, I think we're all beginning to realise how terribly our houses are built here in Australia, and that we're all living in the proverbial tent. And I just think now people are thinking maybe that shouldn't be the norm. Whereas most of us grew up, until I, started doing this a few years ago, I would have been the same. You just thought it was the norm, and, your friends, your family, anyone's house you went to, it was all the same. Freezing, condensation on the windows, that kind of thing. And I think there's a reason that so many people I meet in the passive house space come from Europe.
Yeah.
There's so many. It's either owners or people in the industry, and they must just come here and think, what are we doing when they're doing things so well overseas compared to here? So I think we're starting to think about how we can build better with soaring energy bills and the climate crisis. But I also think that we need to start framing it to people in a different way than about the climate crisis, for instance, instead talking about health. And I think that will resonate much more with a lot of people. I think I read a stat, is it 9% of kids in Australia have asthma? I think it was that high, and a lot of that probably comes from the homes we're living in. So if you told parents, do you want to live in a house where nobody has asthma, there's no respiratory issues, there's no mold, it's quiet. Also, that there's no pests or anything. And I can vouch for that. At the moment, in a little mouse crisis we have in our 1890s weatherboard cottage that we're currently living in, there's a lot of holes. I was crawling around on the floor a couple of weeks ago with steel wool and clove-scented cotton buds trying to block up holes that I didn't even know we had in the old part of our house.
Have you blower-doored your home yet?
No, you're doing
we're
it.
coming down. Yeah.
Although
Let's get to it.
slightly terrifying, but
Oh, that's just do it for rodent protection, or rodent pest control.
Please, we need a cat. Our dog just slept through all of these mice coming in. So I think who's going to say no to that when you frame it in a way that's healthy, that also works towards solving, climate crisis and energy bills.
God.
If 90% less heating and cooling than an average house.
Yeah, the list goes on, right? The benefits are stacked.
Yeah, and they're just the health issues that we're aware of. There's probably a slew of others that we don't know. I mean, I think about the same thing at my place. There's 5 of us, 3 children and 2 adults, and I think about this every winter when we've got the fireplace going and what we're ingesting at night while we're sleeping and the fire's roaring. So, yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
Do you remember the stats on, again, I'm going to keep, this is like the summary of the Passive House conference, sorry everyone, but they talked about New Zealand. Is this right in my memory here of it being the second highest rate of asthma per capita in the world?
Quite possibly. I just remember the story, and I can't remember his name, apologies, an architect who built a little passive house. He had 3 kids. 2 of them had kind of chronic asthma and wouldn't get better after, the childcare bugs and that kind of thing. Built his little passive house. Instantly, those kids, all those issues went away, and then they had a 3rd child who was born in that house, and that child never had any of those issues ever.
Yep. We have such a long list, and some of our guests who have been on this podcast as well who've shared similar stories of just being completely just their entire family ill, sick, without understanding why.
Sick house syndrome.
Yeah, and it was generally due to mold, and it wasn't until they'd sort of moved on from that home, or some had left. In fact, we had someone recently talking to me how they were basically in a room with their 2 children in a single room in this home because it was so mold affected they couldn't live in the bedrooms. And they've got out and they're all better. And yeah, that's a story that I know Jess has shared from Adapt Design and others as well who've been on the podcast about their own experiences, lived experiences of maybe not understanding entirely what was causing it, or just kind of, brushing it off, but not. And then once they realised that it was actually the house, it was making them sick. And back to New Zealand, the reason they've had issues there is due to their mold crisis. They insulated it and went airtight without dealing with ventilation. And on most of the homes that have been impacted by this have got serious mold issues, and the occupants therefore are quite ill. They're onto it now, but we have an opportunity here to, I guess, kind of try to divert as much as we can around that same issue here. So that's we continue on this.
I know. I'll be interested to see Anthony's bringing in a air quality monitor.
Oh, yeah.
And because we've done that, we're living in this old cottage, been there for 12 years, that we've run it on wood heaters is all it had, and we have an old Aga that runs on gas. And because we are not planning to be there for much longer and build a little passive house, I always thought I don't need to do anything about this. Next house will be amazing. And now I'm kind of thinking, well, I've got a bit of a responsibility to do something for the future owners, whether to electrify everything.
Custodian of the home.
Yeah. Which makes me think you always should do all of these things as soon as you move in, not when you're not at the end.
You're about to depart,
Yeah.
It's a really tricky one.
It is.
I'm certain that, and I shared this with you off recording or not recording as well, that I'm in the same position. Like I don't, when do you make these decisions? And it's tricky. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening as well who relate with that.
Yep. You need a life cycle analysis almost on hot water heater. Is it better to let it die and then replace it, or is it better to get off gas now?
Yeah.
But I don't know the answer.
Yeah. No, this is for someone who's more of an expert in this field. Hopefully we can get someone like that on the podcast. If you're listening, reach out.
Okay, Marnie, can you please tell us a little bit more about what you're excited about at the moment?
I'd have to say it is my husband and I's quest for finding and protecting land for biodiversity and conservation, leaving it for future generations to steward, and also building a little passive house on, which leads on from that. But I guess this is an idea that we've been working on for a little while that's almost be the culmination of your lifetime impact almost. How to do things a bit differently. Like I said, we don't have children. So what do we do with anything that's left over? And if you live your whole life trying to create impact, I didn't then want to just leave it.
Yeah.
Anything that you've got left over to, I don't want to say my siblings probably won't listen to it, but siblings that they don't need any money. That's not really going to change anything. So I guess this probably comes back as well. It's like full circle to my my university degree and my first career, as an enviroscientist and then studying zoology, is this idea of finding some land with high conservation values, like a pretty big chunk, or if it's connecting crucial habitats, making a biolink, and protecting that, but then as well as putting a covenant on it so that can never be developed, looking at a different way of doing things in terms of land ownership, where it would probably go into a non-profit, perhaps have a community land trust associated with it. So that land is never sold. It will always be there for whoever you decide, whether that's a group, Indigenous communities, or I don't know, family or whatever, that can always kind of come to that land, improve it, steward it, keep it pest, weed free, work on it, have a passive house. So it's just looking at a different model of land ownership. That's a bit of a work in progress to what that will be. But then I think looking for this first lot of land that we can then also live on and get out of the drafty little cottage. But then perhaps, add to that if we can throughout your life, buying more land that can then be preserved forever.
Using that same model that you'll create from this sort of first initial one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I was absolutely just like blown away when I've heard about the Nightingale model the first time. And, that was based off the Borgroppen model of the, group of people coming together to buy and develop their homes. Like this kind of has that tone to it to me. Like this is something that's a little revolutionary in this country and could be a really amazing model that's can be repeated or replicable. So, yeah, that's cool. And just this is probably my own question just to clarify. So we're not talking about this being entirely public land that anyone can come to. It's more about making sure it's for the right use and
correct.
That's great.
Yeah. So if anyone knows of any amazing land that needs someone to look after it, let me know.
Yeah. You just never know who's listening.
Outside of Victoria as well, or just in Victoria, are you thinking?
I think that's the hard thing too when you're a bit wider with your search, it can make it harder. I mean, it will probably be Victoria, but not necessarily. It's kind of looking for the right land.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, but I guess, we can't be too selective when it comes to the initial one. So you would be living there as someone who is that steward that is, amazing.
I think Ryan, my husband's ready to give up the corporate life and just go around taking out weeds and looking after the land, do that kind of thing. So, we'll see where it goes.
Cool. All right. There is one question that we do ask all our guests. You're more than welcome to take this one.
Okay. Marnie, if you had one wish to change something in the National Construction Code or industry, what would it be?
That one is so easy. I would just say mandate that every new build has to be of Passive House standard. So Scotland is doing it. They starting next year, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's time to ensure that we're building to the highest energy efficiency standards possible, and that those standards are verified throughout the build and at the end of the build, so the residents can be sure of the quality of the house they're living in. But again, it just comes back to that nothing is measured after a build for the performance except Passive House. And I think, everyone says it's expensive, it's not accessible to everyone. But if that becomes mandated, then people will innovate, prices will come down, it'll all happens very quickly. So that's my dream.
Yeah, amazing. Like I think that's probably the highest elevated one we've had so far. Like just go straight to the top, not even messing around.
Why not?
We're just going to go right there. So I'm a massive believer in the as-built verification. That's the biggest draw card for me for Passive House, believe it or not, with health being a close second, because in our experience with what we do in our testing side of things, like most homes are not built in accordance with what was assessed on paper. But you don't get that opportunity to mess that up with Passive House. It is what it is, It's got to be built exactly how it was designed to. So,
like where else would that, if you're talking about the car industry or something, would that fly that you've got safety rules and you build the car but no one tests it?
Oh, not apparently the Volkswagen, but that's, yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you. I really hope that there's a lot more people out there that do exactly what you've done and follow you in your journey. Where can we find out more about you? Where can we contact you? Where can we hear more about your course? What's happening?
Website, I guess, marniehawson.com.au. Instagram, Marnie Hawson. I'm a bit slow on the old Instagram, although I've just come up with an idea that I can become a bit more regular on posting on that. I'm pretty slack. Got Marketing Mondays. I had Marketing Mondays for a while, and then I was just procrastinating when it came to doing social media. I feel like I would rather invoice than write an Instagram post, because I try and make it meaningful, talk about the client, talk about the home, but then everyone says no one reads the caption anyway, so why are you wasting your time? Then AI. We haven't touched on AI. We can just use that for everything now.
Yeah.
So
We have a subscription to Copy AI, and I hear great things about ChatGPT as well.
Yes.
I did hear you have a newsletter. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah. So newsletter, you can sign up. I send it out once a fortnight, and it's a bit random based on things that I like around sustainability, productivity, things for small business.
I saw the blurb about the birds. Now it's making sense now that you've passed. Yeah.
Things like that. So, yeah, that's a good way to follow me as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. Marnie, thank you so much for taking the time out and coming to chat with us today. I have to say, first time we've met, you're an inspiration, honestly. It's been lovely chatting to you, and it's nice to every now and then get that little, sort of, it's a disruption to the way you think when I think I haven't actually considered that before, and that's wild, and it's good. It's a bit of a wake-up call, so I hope everyone else has enjoyed it as much and taken as much value from it as I have. It was great.
Amazing. Thank you so much
Marnie.
for having me on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Outlier podcast. You can find helpful links and contact information regarding this episode in our show notes and on our website, outlierstudio.com.au/podcast. If you like our show, please leave a review and make sure you subscribe to never miss a new episode. If you have further questions for us or want to share some additional feedback, please feel free to DM us on Instagram or Facebook. Until next time on the Outlier podcast.